Welcome back to another episode of Out Loud Geek, where we discuss news and views about pop culture, science fiction, fantasy, food, cooking, the outdoors, and more. It's time, once again, for another depressing dose of dismal Disney. 4 days ago, on March 20th, I released a video entitled Marvel Studios Mayhem as longtime veteran producer Victoria Alonso exits. At that time, the circumstances regarding the departure of Marvel Studios' second highest ranking executive, Victoria Alonso, were unknown. But now we know why she's no longer at Marvel Studios. She had been fired as Marvel Studios' president of physical production, post-production, VFX, and animation. So why did this happen? She had an impressive career at Marvel Studios and was, in fact, at this year's Academy Awards because a film that she had been producer on, Argentina 1985, had been nominated. She was even stopped on the red carpet and posed for photographers. But then something shocked her. "Look at this, 2 women," Alonso said of the female photographers hired for the gig. As in most corners of Hollywood, women are typically outnumbered by men on the photo line. Emotionally, Alonso insisted that the pair put down their cameras and pose for a photo with her in front of a giant Oscar statuette. Then, as they all smiled, Alonso told them, "We've worked so hard to get here and we're not going anywhere." It's very obvious that Victoria Alonso felt completely safe in her longtime role at Marvel Studios, because she herself had several checkmarked boxes. She's a woman, she's gay, and she's Latino. Then, only 8 days after the Oscars, Victoria Alonso was fired. And her dismissal has raised numerous questions about behind-the-scenes workings at the prized content engine. While the cause of Alonso's termination still isn't clear, sources said the decision was made by a consortium that included human resources, Disney's legal department, and multiple executives, including Disney Entertainment co-chairman Alan Bergman, which is who all of Marvel Studios reports to. So the decision to fire Alonso came from the top of Disney's management, and I wouldn't be surprised if it also included Bob Iger himself. Apparently, Alonso's longtime boss and Marvel Chief Executive Officer Kevin Feige felt mired in an impossible situation and ultimately did not intervene, one source added. And another insider said that Alonso had been blindsided, which doesn't surprise me given how many checkboxes she had, as I talked about. She no doubt felt invincible thanks in part to her marked checkboxes, and because for over 17 years, she had been a fixture under Chief Creative Officer Kevin Feige, standing beside Feige's right hand and co-president Louis Desposito. Simultaneously, she had worked to become a brand of her own, a rare openly LGBTQ person and a woman of color in a visible leadership role, known for her fiery passion and outspokenness over diversity and inclusion in Marvel storytelling. And there we go. Yes, Victoria Alonso was one of Disney's top executives pushing wokeness into everything, including MCU's Phase 4 movies that were mostly financial disappointments, with 2 of the movies flopping outright. And now the first Phase 5 movie is also flopping, as I have also talked about in previous videos. Beyond that, numerous sources familiar with Marvel pointed to the tremendous pressure that the unit has been under over the past few years to deliver compelling content, not just to theaters, but also in the form of new streaming shows intended to bolster Disney+. In 2021 and 2022, Marvel unloaded an unprecedented torrent of comic book adventures, releasing 17 titles in the form of 7 movies, 8 streaming series, and 2 specials in a period of 23 months. While that breakneck distribution schedule, which was a product of the coup and the need to constantly feed Disney+, was not of Alonso's making, Marvel was far from being the only studio tasked with delivering feature-level content for a newly launched streaming service. But it was Alonso's job to get each of those titles through Marvel's gargantuan post-production process, and by the summer of 2022, cracks began to show in the company's seemingly impervious armor. Then, starting on Reddit and followed by a series of stories published across the internet, visual effects artists began to loudly complain about Marvel's demanding post-production schedules. Complaints ranged from unrelenting overtime to chronic understaffing to the inability to avoid delivering substandard work due to constantly changing deadlines. And what does that sound like? A disaster in the making. But some singled out Alonso as a kingmaker who would blacklist artists who have pissed her off in any way. I will say here that blacklisting isn't limited to Hollywood. There are unfortunately a number of industries well outside of entertainment that engage in this nefarious practice. But the fact that Alonso has been accused of doing it speaks volumes about her personality, or at least how people perceive her. She sounds vindictive. One visual effects artist recently told Variety that the biggest issue for them was Marvel's inability to provide clear guidelines. Anonymously, the artist said, "The show I was on really struggled because it was an established character whose powers they were reconceiving for the MCU." Gee, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? All of the new Force powers that were given to Rey and Kylo Ren by Kathleen Kennedy and her goons Jar Jar Abrams and Ruin Johnson, so that Rey could become the bestest ever Mary Sue. Most complaints, the artist said, came down to one refrain: Marvel doesn't figure anything out beforehand. Now that's a very damning statement, and if it's true, it demonstrates a significant problem with Marvel's ability to tell good stories, which goes along with the fact that most of the MCU Phase 4 movies either failed or made hardly any money at all, and the first Phase 5 movie, which is Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, is in the process of flopping as I make this video. And there have been some significant criticisms about that movie because for a film that finished shooting over a year before it was due in theaters, it has been heavily criticized for having generic visual effects that look like CGI glop that were very flat and cruddy looking. And what that flat out says is that Victoria Alonso wasn't actually doing her job, because managing visual effects was supposed to be one of her top responsibilities, and MCU movies are extremely dependent upon having good visual effects, among other things. Maybe she just got too busy trying to promote as much wokeness as possible. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania has only grossed $463 million globally to date, which is the worst performance of any Ant-Man movie in the MCU, and it's very unlikely that it will be able to break even. And I just love how the article ends. Alonso's replacement was not immediately announced by Disney, but given her expansive portfolio of duties, it may take more than one person to fill her shoes. If it would take multiple people to carry out the duties that Victoria Alonso was supposed to be doing, then not only was she given too many responsibilities to begin with, which was the fault of upper Disney management, it's obvious that she wasn't able to perform all of her duties to a level that was commensurate with her high-ranking executive position. And she probably pressed to have all of those responsibilities in order to grant her greater power to push her woke agenda. As I said earlier, she undoubtedly felt that her position was completely safe because of all her clicked checkboxes. But what her firing says is that no one at Disney or any of its subsidiaries is safe, regardless of how many checkboxes they have clicked. Could Kathleen Kennedy be next? We can only hope. Thanks for watching today, and a huge thanks to everyone who has subscribed to our channel. We appreciate your support. If you enjoyed this video, please press the like button, and please feel free to share a comment. If you'd like to see more of our videos in the future and help support this channel, please press the red subscribe button, and please press the bell to receive notifications for new content. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter by clicking on the links in the description. Until next time, this is Out Loud Geek.